Hi there, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the soundbites. Joining me in studio today is Matt Cota, who's the executive director of Meadow Consulting. And Matt has been on several times before. I think you still have the Most on the Show award.
Well, thank you very much.
Because I love talking to you.
Appreciate you inviting me back.
Well, no, it's great. You have, honestly, I told you, it took me 2 days to work on these questions. You have got a lot going on.
Well, I think so, but I like to stay busy.
Yeah, you do,
Yeah.
I think. So can you talk a little bit about your background and the consulting business and who you represent?
Sure. So I'm a Vermont native, seventh generation Vermonter. Not that that matters. Everyone who lives in Vermont
It
is
matters
a
big in my house.
I grew up in southern Vermont, in Westminster West, which is just south of Bellows Falls, Vermont. Went to schools in Westminster and Bellows Falls and at Saxons River. Then I attended school in Washington, D.C., came back to Vermont and was a reporter. I was a legislative reporter for WPTZ back in 1996, 97, and 98. So that was right during Act 60. It was an exciting time under the Dean administration, in which I was a young reporter. And then was a journalist in California for about 10 years. I also taught school out there. Came back to Vermont to raise my children with my wife, and started working for the Vermont Fuel Dealers Association, and I've since diversified. I now work for the Auto Dealers Association. I served on the South Burlington City Council. I was on the Development Review Board there as well, and I teach at the University of Vermont.
Yes, I just remember that when you were talking. I said, I think you teach also.
That's right.
How do you fit all and then do all this? I mean, you must live at the State House, or do you do Zoom?
No, I'm at the
You're
State
there?
House every day, and it's important to be there. Because you just can't get everything that you want through Zoom and reading. While my old colleagues in the press corps are certainly do a great job, really you don't get the sense of what's happening on behalf of your clients. And I work for those industries. I work for nonprofit trade associations, but those largely in the transportation and energy space. So those that are out in the cold. Delivering heating fuel, those that sell and service vehicles, those that sell trucks. So I've got to know a lot about energy, taxes, regulations, and then I forgot to mention that I also serve on the Vermont Climate Council, appointed by the Speaker of the House.
Right, and we have to talk about that
to represent the fuel sector, and so I have certainly knowledge about that process and what's coming there.
And when do you get time to write? I was going to compliment you because you have so many things going out to your clients, so many articles and newspapers, and you do a great job.
Well, thank you. I publish 6 weekly newsletters, all for different audiences with different purposes. I also publish 2 directories, and I publish a monthly magazine that goes out to anyone that wants it. It's called the Meadow View. And then I also, because this is the way we're at, I publish on social media and provide quick updates for people that either don't have time to read or maybe don't subscribe to the different channels.
Right, that's great, because I get several of them. I think I didn't know you did 6.
Yes.
I get 7.
You can get them all if you want.
I can. I'm just thinking about that. I'll have to sign up. But are you a one-man show in your consulting group, or do you have people helping you?
No, I work with a very talented videographer who helps put together a lot of this stuff. I work with some very talented people behind the scenes that help with the writing, with the management, and I'm very blessed to work with such talented and smart people. But
I'm glad to hear that.
But they like to be in the background, and I prefer being on TV.
Yes, you do. I met somebody that knew you the other day. If I could think of her name, I would. I'll tell you probably later. But she was very impressed. She kept saying she's working with us on Campaign for Vermont.
Oh, excellent.
And she said, "Oh, Matt Cota."
Sure.
So there you go. Yeah. Well known. So I thought maybe we could start out by talking about the 2 that I think anyway are the 2 biggest things happening this year. And we just talked a little bit about the transportation shortfall and federal match, which since we're a little bit of an expensive place to live in the first place, to try to find a transportation match and not leave dollars on the table is sad. And the second one is Governor Scott's State of the State, where I think he pretty much talked about education and pretty much told the legislature to get moving in his direction with what he's proposing.
Right.
So maybe if you could talk about those two issues and.
Sure, happy to. You know, transportation is near and dear to my heart. I know from
It is for mine.
you as well.
Yeah.
But you know, the reality is, and apologies to Joint Fiscal, I'm going to speak in round numbers here. Essentially, the transportation budget, the money that we collect is about $300 million, $100 million from DMV fees, $100 million from the gasoline and diesel fuel tax, and about $100 million from the purchase and use tax. But that's not all of the purchase and use tax we generate. When you buy or sell a vehicle, 6% goes into this fund, and we sell about $2.4 billion worth of vehicles in Vermont every year. That equates to about $150 million. So $100 million of that, 2/3, goes into the transportation fund, fixing our roads and bridges. The other $50 million goes, guess where? The education fund.
Right.
So there is a real concern that this year, that when you put the numbers all together, even with some staffing cuts at the Agency of Transportation,
Yep.
even with other things, deferred maintenance and all of that, even with all of those actions, we're still about $35 million short. Now, why does that matter? It matters because it's not just $30 to $35 million worth of projects that won't get done. It's because that $30 to $35 million is used to match federal funds. So we pay 50 cents a gallon in tax every time we fill up our car with gasoline. 18 cents go to the feds, the rest comes to Vermont. Well, the 18 cents that goes to the feds, we can apply for federal matching funds to fix our state roads. We provide 20% of the money, the feds provide 80% of the money, and so we can maximize the funds that we use in order
Right.
to pave more roads and fix more bridges. So in other words, if we're not spending that $30 million, $35 million in matching funds, we're leaving on the table about $115 million.
Right, which
So-
makes a big difference.
Right, so if we want to get that federal money, draw down as much as possible, we have to show our 20%.
Right.
So do we have the money? We certainly do. It comes from just keep all of the purchase and use tax money. That's one of the proposals that will be heard this week in front of the House Ways and Means Committee. It was in the governor's budget address. He also thinks it should return to the transportation
Whoa.
fund. But of course, let's be clear. What happens if you take $50 million out of the education fund? Well, you either got to cut something there or fill it back up with something.
Right.
And when we talk about the cost of education, we spend over $2 billion a year,
Right.
educating 80,000 public school children. Those costs have gone up, right? But so have our property taxes.
And we are one of the highest spending per pupil in the nation, are we not?
We are absolutely.
Yeah,
but
right.
but it's not just property taxes. So we certainly feel that acutely, and I can tell you, my parents, people living on a fixed income, people that are cash poor, land rich,
Right.
certainly feel it, because when your property taxes go up 12%, as they're projected to do this year, if
Yep.
something isn't done, if you're living on a fixed income, you are cutting something out of your own personal budget.
Yep.
And that's a challenge. It's a challenge for a rapidly aging population. And so, lawmakers are grappling with these issues, which they're not easy to solve, or else they would have been solved,
Right.
which is, how do we provide better educational outcomes for our children? How do we keep schools open that are in our rural communities that have seen a dwindling population,
Right.
down 12% over the last couple of decades? And then at the same time, how do we ensure that the costs don't continue to escalate on educating those children? Because a lot of Vermonters, particularly those seniors on fixed incomes, cannot afford double-digit property tax increases every year.
Can I raise my hand?
So-
Speaking of fixed income?
So we've got to find a solution, and none of it's coming easy. So door number one, close schools.
Right.
Well, that's not great. I mean,
No.
schools are part
People
of your community.
cherish the local
They cherish their
schools.
local schools. It's hard to get more people to move to your town if you tell them, oh yeah, we don't have a school.
Right.
So that's not great. Option number two, just do nothing. Well, guess what? We're going to have double-digit property taxes
Right.
every year, and we're going to have find more money from other funds, such as transportation that
Yep.
we're doing right now, such as sales tax, such as other things, in order to make that fund whole. So, door number three is the one that I'm in favor of, but I'll admit it's not hard, which is find more people to move to Vermont, and more young people that
Right.
want to raise their families here.
Yeah.
But in order for that to happen, what do we need for that to happen? More housing, more affordable housing.
Right. And a
So that's
little
talking-
cheaper living, maybe.
Yeah, so we're talking about permit reform, but we're also talking about efforts to drop some of the things that that perhaps made Vermont as it is. I mean, we celebrate the fact that we don't have billboards here. We have strict zoning, and anyone that has a complaint about the aesthetics or the view shed can absolutely have their say in the
Right.
environmental court. Yes, that's what's make Vermont rural
Right.
and unpopulated. And we have to think, is that what we really want for the next 50 years? Last 50
Right.
years, it's served us well in keeping Vermont beautiful, but our beauty is a function of our poverty, and that is not necessarily the path we want to go
Now,
on for the next 50
did I read
years.
that the governor found or has some one-time money that he could put towards property tax to try to lower that? But that's, to me, that's sort of kicking the old can down the street, down the road, and we're going to have this issue next year and
Well, and we've had it the year prior and the year
right?
prior.
Yes,
I
for 2
mean,
years we used that.
I mean, certainly the can is actively being kicked while we're also grasping for solutions.
Right.
And some of the solutions include making a determination about how we can consolidate services in order to save money. But the best solution in my mind, not necessarily easy to find, but is rather than try to figure out which schools with the most empty desks we close, we fill those empty desks with kids because
Right.
we create an environment in which people want to move here and
Right.
they want to grow their families here. And that involves, quite honestly, reducing the cost of living. That goes back to
Right.
affordability.
Do they, I know this is probably asking a foolish question, but doesn't the legislature see the connect between people moving in and lower costs? Because I don't think it's that hard. Yes, it's hard decisions and you've got to do it, but there are some pretty simple answers to that, reducing costs. I mean, at least I see it. I don't know if others do, but
Well, it's certainly
they
been the
don't
mantra.
get it, do they?
Certainly the mantra of our governor, which is we need more taxpayers, not more taxes.
Right.
And having served on the Plainfield Planning Commission, having served on the Development Review Board in South Burlington, and then on the City Council,
Right.
I've done my turn in local government. And as we start thinking about how can we make our towns more attractive for
Right.
further development and investment and more housing, you're up against the same thing that you have in other communities, whether it's California or Vermont or
Right.
Ohio. If people don't want something being built in their backyard,
Right.
they're going to speak out.
Yep.
And in Vermont, they have the levers of power in order to delay, and delay is often deny. I mean, I remember my time on the Development Review Board in South Burlington, and particularly one project where the owner of the field that they wanted to develop was adamant. He said, I want to build housing here. I know we're at acute shortage.
Yeah.
We need more housing,
Here we are.
and I'm going to stick with it. It took him 10 years to
Wow.
get it done. But he was convinced. He's a hero because he wanted to happen in his community. But others who are just there as a capital investment to make a return on their money
Right.
may look at that and go, well, I'm not waiting 10 years. I'm not going to tie up all this capital, and for a flip of a coin, it
Right.
could all be lost when I can go to North Carolina or I can go to New Hampshire. And I know that if I buy a piece of land, propose a reasonable development
Yeah.
that more for housing where people can live and work and prosper and pay taxes, I know that that's going to be turned around in 6 months. If I have to go 3 years and have that uncertainty of having all that money on civil engineers and taxes and lawyers all tied up without a return on investment,
Yep.
so it's those landowners that are committed to their communities and want to build, they're heroes. The ones that decide to take their capital elsewhere, it's understandable.
Yeah, for sure. Why wait?
Yeah.
I was told, I don't know how many times when I was in transportation from construction people and business people, we just want to know how much and how long.
Yeah.
And that's all they want to know. How much is it going to cost me without Act 250 changing every
Right.
day and adding more and more costs? And what are we looking at? 6 years? Forget it.
Right.
See you.
And rest assured, the other side knows that.
Yeah.
If you have the means to hire an attorney and you don't want something
dragging it
built
out.
in the field in your view shed that you don't own,
Right.
well, there's ways to do that. And trust me, they know.
I just was thinking, I don't know if you know the travel center that's right off of our
Sure.
intersection
Yeah.
here. Wayne Lamberton, I've had him on the show. 6 years it took him to build that. He
Yeah.
put in so much money, and it's beautiful. It fits right into the neighborhood, and it's very convenient, and a lot of people shop there. But the neighbors didn't know what to expect, and if there was any one person who fell over backwards to do whatever they asked, he did
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And 6 years he had to wait, same thing.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
You know, I go to Boise, Idaho, because my son lives there now. He's a civil engineer out there. I go to Raleigh, North Carolina, because my daughter lives there now,
God.
and I see what they're doing there, and it's tremendous growth and productivity, and it's really amazing what's happening there, and a lot of that is because of an environment in which they are encouraging that type of economic development. I would love for them to move back to Vermont, but the reality is
And why? What's here for them?
they're going to live in their childhood bedroom. They certainly, on their salaries at their age, could not afford a apartment or a condo in the town that they grew up in. And that's wrong.
Yeah.
We should change that.
Big bucks.
Yeah.
Every time I hear this, the cost of apartments and condos, I just can't believe it.
Yeah.
I just like my little house. But anyway, so how about talking about our governor's state of the state, which I found fascinating, in education and what he's proposing.
Yeah, every once in a while, particularly governors who have served successive terms. I mean, the last one that I recall, I've been working in the State House for 22 years.
Yeah. Howard.
So I remember multiple governors, but I particularly remember Governor Shumlin when he was talking about the opioid addiction abuse. And at the time, it was like, it was odd. But in hindsight, it was like, no, he identified a real problem early on and decided to commit to that. And I sort of saw the same thing from our governor, Governor Scott, when he talked about Act 73 and about how the way we've been doing things, and yes, kicking the can is an appropriate metaphor, and everyone, we've been doing it on all parties and all governors of all political stripes
both parties,
for a while.
For sure.
But I think what he really was saying there is no more. I mean, we have to make these measures so we don't have those double-digit property tax increases. But if we're not making forward momentum, this is a multi-year strategy to figure out how to bend the curve, to reduce the costs of educating our children while improving educational outcomes. Those are hard things to square. Oftentimes, if we want something better, we just pour more money on it, and sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. But the reality is there is no more there,
right?
Unless there is a dramatic restructuring of or repopulating of Vermont. And have we seen this? Sure. In the 1970s, our population grew tremendously with the Back to Land movement, and that certainly has reshaped our culture and our landscape. And could we be looking at something similar as people escape the cities or more crowded areas because they want Vermont? Sure. We certainly should be prepared for that opportunity because, let's face it, we're a rapidly aging population.
Right.
Not you, but me and others.
Right.
And our housing stock is also old. So we talk about climate goals, but we're living in old, leaky homes on dirt roads, far away from transit centers, far away from hospitals and schools. And
don't we have the oldest housing, whatever they call it?
Housing stock, yeah.
So we have the oldest? Yes.
So how do we fix that? Well, we talk about we should be building in our downtown city centers, and we should be building with news. Well, what do we need for that? Well, we need laborers. We need electricians. We need plumbers. We need builders. And, we need them to stay here and keep at it. So we really need more young people. We need more young people for the trades, and we need more young people that raise families, that can fill our schools, that can pay taxes, and not have these awful conversations about which schools should close because half the desks are empty, and talk about we should be so lucky where we're talking about, oh, this school is thriving because every desk is filled and it becomes part of our community.
And our stats are not something to write home to mom about with the kids, where they are in learning, and it's pretty embarrassing for the amount of money we spend anyway. I don't understand it.
Yeah. So are there ways to improve educational opportunities while reducing costs? I'm optimistic we can find them. I understand the sentiment about not wanting to close community schools. I absolutely do, but certainly there must be a way that we can cede some local control so that these decisions aren't made at yelling matches at school boards and are made in a more constructive way as we look at the costs of providing education for what is now 80,000 students and understanding how spread out we are given our rural nature.
Is the governor still looking at only 5 superintendencies or whatever he's calling? Is he breaking the state up into 5 sections?
I think 5 is a a straw number. It's
okay.
it could change.
Hopefully flexible. I
It's-
just find it
yeah.
that there's too big, in my mind, for people to go to the meetings. It's bad enough now in my own town. Very few people go to the board meetings there, which they should.
Right.
And if you've got a distance to travel, especially with our hills and dales, you may not get them out. And
Right.
I'm just worried about that. It may be cost effective, and if that's the goal, it may work. But if you want to get people involved, I'm not so sure
Well,
that will.
I
but
certainly
that's
think
me.
I certainly think that there's opportunities around. Whenever you draw a line, arbitrary line,
Right.
There's some person on the other side of it that doesn't like it. But
Yeah, right.
at some point, we have to figure out how we can reduce costs and
Yeah.
make more operational
Yeah.
efficiencies. And sometimes that happens with consolidation.
That's good. That's good. I know I've been following a lot of it on, and I was telling you before the show that I've been following the discussions about what the federal budget will impact Vermont, and that's a little scary too. Some things good, some things not so good.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
we
going to be
do-
an interesting year.
Yeah, I think the numbers are about $9 billion budget that was being proposed, and over that 9.4, and a third of that comes from the federal government.
Yep.
And certainly that changes year to year, certainly with different Congress and different presidents.
Right.
But it's absolutely part of the calculation
Yeah.
when the Appropriations Committee gets to work figuring out what they can spend.
Do they have a limited time to solve these problems, or could this be? Yeah, I mean, is there a deadline to come up with the transportation match, and
Well,
must
for
be
the
soon?
for the match, we'll have figured it out before the federal government has.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, ideally,
Yeah.
we are a part-time legislature.
Yeah.
We hope to adjourn mid-May, and when that happens,
They'll find an answer.
hopefully those decisions will be made. And if
Right.
Washington disagrees with those decisions, or if there is some other type of action happening in D.C., well then the emergency board, the heads of the monies committees get together with the governor, and
Right.
they can take action to either support a program this way or cut a program that way. And we saw that with AOT. The Agency of Transportation realized that they were going to come up short. And here's an important point to press upon any viewers that are concerned about, that pothole that I hit, and why are our roads
Right.
substandard and this. If you think about, our the three main levers for collecting money: the purchase and use tax. Again, that's vehicles that we buy and sell. 2/3 of it goes for the roads, 1/3 for education. You got the $100 million that we collect in gasoline and diesel tax. All of it goes to fixing the roads, and then the DMV fees and registrations and permits and all that stuff. But those funds, all those categories, are growing about 1%. Gasoline sales, while they dropped precipitously in 2020 because of COVID, they have since climbed up, not to where they were before, but they've been fairly steady. About 265 million gallons of gasoline we sell every year for the last 5 years. It is steady as a rock. However, it's not going up. It probably won't go up as more
Well,
people
because
use hybrids.
they're making them so efficient, gas efficient, and so you're getting more miles out of your car, and they're lasting longer.
Yeah, that's true. So we'll see, 1%, 2% drop or gain, but it's
Right.
nothing dramatic, right? Same thing with purchase and use tax. So the number of vehicles sold in Vermont last year actually went down from the year before, but because it's based on the price of the vehicle, the purchase and use tax was relatively stable, about 1 to 2%. Something what we can expect for, I would say, the next 5 years. However, the cost on the other side of the equation, the cost to fix roads and bridges is estimated over the last 5 years to go up 62%.
Right,
So think about
right.
that. You've got a fund with three main drivers that are basically toggling up 1%, 1.5% every year. Great, consistent, they're not dropping off.
Yep.
But if your costs, your inputs are going up 62% over the past 5 years,
Right.
this is the cost of labor, the cost of insurance, the cost of equipment, asphalt, of steel, all the stuff that goes involved
Yep.
in making sure our roads and bridges are safe to travel on. Those costs are going up.
Yep. I remember when I
exponentially.
worked at transportation, which was quite a while, about 10 years ago, they said it was $1 million per mile on 89. When I worked there, it was 10 million per mile.
Wow.
So that's what they told me that would cost to build a mile of I-89. That's a little bit of an increase. So,
Yeah,
big
Yeah.
bucks.
And it's certainly, and those are national stats, but certainly we're experiencing here in Vermont. We're not an island, and so every single state is experiencing something quite similar to us, in which the federal government is ready to match, and the states that come up with the 20% get the 80.
Wow. Have they solved the EV problem about how to tax those little guys? And
So
are they
that-
looking at mileage, or what are they doing?
That is one of the most interesting issues so far in the State House this year, from my opinion.
From your perspective, right?
Which is, we have a deadline, January 1 of 2027, so less than 12 months.
Right.
We're supposed to release a motor, it was called MBUF, a mileage-based user fee. So a mileage-based user fee, kind of just says it right in the name. We are going to charge you based on the miles driven,
I'd like that.
not on a gas tax or fee. So right now, it's just for EVs. So when it comes to EVs, there is a fee associated with that. That goes to pay for electrical charging infrastructure.
Right.
There's a sales tax when you go plug in your electric vehicle at a gas station or a grocery store, not at home, but at a charging station where you put in your credit card and you charge it, like up in Berlin.
Right.
There's a sales tax, but the sales tax on the electricity for charging your car goes to the education fund.
Oh,
So we've got sales tax on electricity going to the education fund. We've got
I didn't know that.
we got permit fees, registration fees that go to to maintain the infrastructure of electrical vehicle charging, not for pavement or asphalt or anything. And in going forward, how should we assess a fee on electric vehicles?
Right.
The solution that is in the law is, okay, we're going to transfer to miles-based user fee. Here's the problem. When you have a miles-based user fee, number one, you only capture individuals that have green license plates that register in the state. You can't use a mileage-based user fee for someone with a New Hampshire license plate, number one. Number two, if you live in St. Johnsbury or Bellows Falls or Brattleboro, you may do 90% of your driving because of work in New Hampshire. Or if you're in Pulteney, you might go to New York or Massachusetts. Should you be paying for miles when you're not using Vermont roads?
Oh.
So there is actually a solution to that, but you're not going to like it. The solution is this transponder. They actually do it in certain states. They had testimony on it, which for $70, you pay $70, you put a transponder in your car, and you what's called geofencing. So it recognizes when you cross the Connecticut River.
Wow.
So, we have all these other bills that say really worry about data privacy and big tech and all these companies that are scraping our info to find out where we are and what we do.
Going.
Well, this is government-sanctioned data privacy.
I love it.
So there's plenty of people that would say, not for me.
Yeah.
So there is another proposal that says, okay, what if we give people a choice? We let people either put this $70 transponder over there, and of course you do that if you say, I don't drive very many miles, so I'll pay that and I'll pay less. Some that may just say, you know what, I'll just pay the fee, which is right now $89 per car for an electric vehicle. Or they could create a mileage-based user fee in which they check the mileage at inspections. Now, again, you'd be paying for miles in New Hampshire and Massachusetts and Quebec and Wales, but that would be the way you could actually track mileage. Here's the rub. They may get rid of inspections. There are multiple bills to get rid of inspections of motor vehicles. So you've got the situation where you've got a mileage-based user fee on the books, ready to go into place on January 1. We don't know how much it will cost or how they'll collect the information, right? You've got this sort of privacy concerns and the cost of a transponder in your car. You've got inspections as a way to track miles, but we might do away with inspections.
Right.
And then we still got the fee still hanging out there, which again doesn't contribute to maintaining our roads and bridges, only goes to building more electric vehicle chargers. So your initial question to me, my long-winded answer, but your initial question to me was, have we figured it out?
No. And you've got how many months? You've got till
we got 11 months to figure it out.
They'll do it.
Yeah.
Probably December.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So,
I see it. Nobody thinks of all those things you just mentioned.
So the reality is that there has been the suggestion, and I understand the suggestion, I'm just not sure how it worked, which is the gas tax is a pretty good, it's not perfect, but it's as good as we're going to get to adjusting to our use of the roads. In other words, you pay 50 cents a gallon on a gallon of gasoline bought in Vermont, 18 cents to the feds, the rest to us. And that, you buy more gas when you drive more miles, except for the person that drives a really fuel efficient car. I mean, you can get a conventional hybrid, not an electric car, a conventional hybrid that might get 45, 50 miles per gallon. And then you might have someone driving an old truck that maybe get 12 miles to the gallon. So in that essence, the person that's driving the more fuel efficient car is not paying for as many miles as the person that's driving the less fuel efficient car if they drive the same miles, right? But it's as close as we're going to get to a mileage-based user fee because it's based on gallons. It's really hard to do that with electrons when we're talking about EVs, and it's really hard to figure out how we are going to accurately assess the miles driven in the state without some sort of device in the car that's geofenced that tracks whether or not you're on the west or the east side of the Connecticut River. So I'm not sure what the answer is, but
I bet a lot of people would be a little upset with that if you were able to track where they went.
yeah. So I think the reality is that, and I've heard no one say that absolutely everyone has to do this, but if given a choice, if I was giving you door number 1, 2, or 3, would you take the transponder? Well, you might if you drive a lot in New Hampshire.
Right.
If you drove exclusively in Vermont and didn't drive that much, maybe you would just have the inspection and take a picture of your odometer and then you'd pay that. Or if you weren't sure, you'd just pay the flat fee and move on. But if people are given 3 choices, they're probably going to do whatever's in their economic interest.
For sure.
So does that raise more money for the transportation fund or less? I don't know.
I don't know
And
either.
I don't think we do. We know.
Yeah.
So the reality is that we need to find $33 million. We know where to find it. It's from the purchase and use tax. It currently goes to the education fund. If we take that money out of the education fund and put it back to where it was intended, well, then we got a hole over there.
There's a lot of issues. Like we used to camp in Maine for all summer. So how do you judge the miles I drove in for 4 months in Maine?
Right. And it's not just that. We're also seeing this in the heating fuel space. So there's a proposal. It's going to be, I'm going to testify on it later this week, which is, do we charge, so right now, if you're a residential customer, and you get a delivery of heating oil or propane or kerosene, no sales tax. Yes, you pay the weatherization fee of 2 cents a gallon. Yes, you pay the petroleum cleanup fee of 1 cent a gallon, but there's no sales tax if you're a residential customer. If you're a business customer, yes, heating fuel dealers will charge you 6% and then remit that to the state. That's the requirement. Now there's an effort to say, well, if you're a second homeowner, if you live 6 months and a day at another house, then you should pay the 6% sales tax. And we get why. They're trying to find, nickels and dimes in their couch cushions. But that brings up the other challenge, right? So when, it's going to be negative 40 degrees this weekend, when the fuel dealer gets a call saying, I'm out of oil, my pipes are going to freeze, I need oil now, or I need gas now, and they come to your house, they are not going to do a residency check. They're not going to determine whether or not you live there 6 months of their day. They're going to hand them a bill, and they're going to assume if they live in the house and they're sleeping there that they're a resident.
Yeah.
But the repercussions are, if actually they do that, and then there's an audit, and they say, well, didn't you know this person actually lives in Florida for 6 months of the day, and they only live here, then here's your fine. It's like, we're being put in an awful situation where we have to determine the residency status of our customers when all we want to do is keep them warm. That's one of the challenges. It would be simple if they were all the same, but yet there's this effort to pick out, well, these individuals must have money because they have 2 homes. So let's figure out how we can charge them a tax.
Jump right in here because you're talking about delivering fuel, that there's a waiver that's been was issued by, I think, the state, right? But it ended, and now the federal carrier has extended it a whole month, which will make the people can deliver fuel whenever you need it and whenever they can, right?
Yep. So if you drive a big truck, think about a delivery truck or a tractor trailer truck. No matter what it's carrying, if it's carrying coffee or propane or heating oil or gasoline, you've got to have what's called the commercial driver's license.
Right.
The commercial driver's license is regulated by the federal government, the Federal Motor Highway Safety Administration. Right. So there's different stipulations, different requirements for truck drivers for safety reasons, right? Those restrictions also include how many hours you can be on the road. And the reasons are clear. You don't want someone just loading up on coffee and driving 24 hours straight across
Right,
the country
right.
in a very large truck, right? But that's not the case with heating fuel drivers. We are, yes, once we show up to work and we grab the keys and we get in the truck, we're on the clock to the point where we turn the keys back in. And if you can only work 10 hours a day,
Right.
because that's what the federal rules say you can do, even if you're only actually driving for less than half that time, because you're getting out of the truck, you're
Right,
taking that
definitely.
hose off the thing, you're walking to the fill pipe, you're standing in the cold for 5 minutes while that tank fills up,
Yeah.
you're shutting it off, you're putting the bill on the thing, you're taking it back, and you're doing that 20, 25 times a day.
You'd be tired.
You'd be tired, yes, but you don't necessarily need a strong cup of coffee.
Yeah.
The cold air is your cup of coffee waking you up. So we've always said during times of emergency, it makes sense. During times of extreme cold,
Right.
and during times of snowstorm, when those trucks cannot go at the normal speed, they have to slow down because out of safety.
Yeah.
That it's going to take more time to deliver that fuel. And so during those times, and they're not every year, but every other year, we either have a weather event, whether it's an ice storm or a snowstorm, or extreme cold, in which our truck drivers will have to deliver more, work longer, and they're happy to do it, happy to make overtime, but they also, the company and the truck driver will get audited, and if they work longer than they're allowed to by federal law, well, then there's fines associated
Yeah.
with that. So what this does, more than anything, this declaration of emergency is not because we're in emergency conditions. It's a declaration of emergency, creates the structure in which a company and an individual who wants to work extra hours, overtime, in order to make sure Vermonters are safe and warm, isn't penalized by it, by the federal government.
Right.
So we're glad we have it.
Yes, it's
in
good.
place until February 15th, and trust me, those trucks,
Yep.
there will be no days off
You said
on Saturday and
40
Sunday.
below? Or are you kidding?
Well, the reports are with the wind chill factor in parts
Oh,
of the
wind chill.
Northeast could be -40. By the time this
Excellent.
airs, it will all be come and gone, and maybe my weather forecast will be wrong. But
Let's hope
when
so.
we see those numbers
That's
of wind chill factors on the mountains,
Yeah,
it's
that's-
going to be cold skiing on our
Yes,
mountains. let's
yes,
put
it
that
is.
way.
I couldn't even think about that. Could you tell us the committee that you're on with regard to heat and talk about that? Because, go ahead, why don't you tell us, because there was something that we've stopped doing, the one that was turned down last year,
Right.
right? And could you explain
We've
that?
got lots
'Cause
of starts and
I-
stops.
I-
and I've been
I read about this, I don't know how many times, which added to the 2 days, because I didn't quite understand
Yeah.
the difference.
Yeah, in the last 20 years, I've been on a half dozen committees
And we're still here.
and groups, and this is all, I'm not paid to do this. These are all volunteer because I'm interested in energy policy,
Right.
and I'm interested in providing a perspective that perhaps is not heard
I
in the
bet.
policy fields and certainly in the State House, and
Right.
that is we need to think about the people that are delivering the fuel that 75%
Amen
of
to that.
Vermonters depend on
Yep.
for heat, hot water, and cooking. And if we just think that they can just go away,
Yep.
well, we've got another thing to say about that.
Exactly.
And so I did serve on the technical advisory group for the clean heat standard.
Clean
I
heat.
served on the equity advisory group as well, and then I was appointed by the Speaker of the House to serve on the Vermont Climate Council, which
That's it,
is
Climate Council.
23 people that get together and develop a climate action plan.
Right.
Every 4 years it's updated, and the reason why we have the authority and power and purview to do this is because of a 2020 law called the Vermont Global Warming Solutions Act.
Right.
So in 2020, the legislature, the supermajority of the legislature passes this law. The governor vetoes it, but the supermajority overrides, so it becomes law. And what the Global Warming Solutions Act does is a couple of things. Number one, it creates a climate council, of which I now serve, and says, hey, every 4 years, come up with a plan that helps us reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And then the amount that we have to plan for is a very strict mandate set in that 2020 law. So the next big mandate is we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% below where they were in 1990 by 2030. So we've got less than 4 years.
Wow.
And by that time, we have to show as a state that our greenhouse gas emissions that we emit are 40% below where they were 35 years ago. Well, it'll be 40 years ago when we 40 years ago by the time we hit 2030. So obviously we were a different state in a different world, different population, but yet the requirements in the law say you got to get 40% below where you were way back 35, 40 years ago, in order for you to be in compliance. Well, so what? So what if we're not in compliance?
Well, not only that, it's only a couple of years. I mean, how?
Right. But here's the real hammer, right? I mean, it's good to set goals. We all have goals.
Right.
Certainly, I hope we all have goals and positive goals that are healthy and reducing, becoming more efficient. That's a healthy goal.
Yep.
However, when it's a mandate, then what happens is that anyone in Vermont has the right to sue the Secretary of the Agency of Natural Resources and say, the law says you must, not you should, you must reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by the end of the decade. Show us your math. The math shows that you have failed.
Right.
And a Washington County Superior Court judge will, I assume, will be sued. And a Washington County Superior Court judge can look at that document and say, yep, the law says you got to do it.
And you didn't.
The plaintiff says you didn't do it. I read the numbers and go, yeah, you didn't do it. And here's the judgment. Regulatory action must be taken in order to comply with the law. Well, what does that mean? Well, the Agency of Natural Resources has a book. It's called the Climate Action Plan. I was one of the authors. I voted no, but I was overruled and it passed. And in the Climate Action Plan includes such things as the Clean Heat Standard, which is a program to encourage fuel sellers to sell less fuel by punishing them through a series of taxes if they don't.
Right.
In it is join a cap and invest program like they have in Quebec and in California, in which importers of gasoline and diesel fuel are capped at how much they can bring in, and anything over the cap they have to pay a fee for, and that fee would be used to provide incentives for electric vehicles. It also includes other measures that we have tried, but we have stopped. So for instance, one of the biggest regulatory levers in the first Climate Action Plan, which is back in 2021, was we should join California and mandate that car sellers sell EVs, an increasing amount from 35% in 2026 all the way to 100%. So in 2035, only thing you can get on a new car lot in Vermont and California is electric vehicle, no more gas. So that was the plan, except we ran into a real roadblock, and that is the consumers have free will. And while we have seen steady increases in electric vehicle sales in Vermont over the last 5 years, 2%, 3%, 4%, as more people take advantage of rebates and incentives, and certainly those that have a garage with a level 2 charger and are commuting shorter distances, they love their cars, and that's wonderful.
Right.
However, we couldn't sell for many people. It's just not practical.
Right.
And the real problem with the mandates, as I see it, is that we were politicizing powertrains. What's the fastest way to get people to be angry about this policy is when they realize the government is forcing me to do this, whether it's your heating system or your car.
Right.
These are in your home or something that you rely on every day. And if the government is telling you what to do and you don't think it fits your lifestyle or your desires, well, then they turn into advocates.
It sort of challenges that free will thing we talk about.
So while electric cars are great, I think so what happened in 2025? In 2025, for the first time, Pat, in 5 years, sales of battery electric vehicles in Vermont declined.
Whoa.
So we were projecting, 5%, we were going up. I was projecting, and I track this data every month.
Yep.
I was projecting that we were at 11.5%. I said, we'll easily be at 12, maybe 13%. Still far short of the 35% mandate, but I think we'll continue to decrease. We haven't. We're at 10% now.
Wow, good.
So we went down by a percentage point.
Did the hybrids get, because I'm more comfortable with the concept of a hybrid than I am with strict electric vehicle.
So there's two kinds of hybrids, right? There's what's called the PHEV, which is the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. A plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, yes, there is literally a plug that you can charge a battery, but there's also a smaller gas engine in the car.
Yeah, right. That's what I like.
And then there's called the conventional hybrid. So conventional hybrid, no plug, just a gas engine, but while the car is running, you are recharging a battery on board. So for conventional hybrids, you are getting 10 to 15 miles per gallon more than you would in a standard internal combustion engine vehicle, right? But those don't get any credit. even though you are
Don't
saving...
they lower the quality of the
They
air?
absolutely reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay.
They absolutely, greenhouse gas emissions. They absolutely reduce sales of gasoline.
Yeah.
But they do not meet the mandates in the California law, which says, no, it must have a plug. So you can't just throw an extension cord out the window and say, this is a plug-in vehicle. They don't accept conventional hybrid vehicles despite their fuel efficiency.
And then, of course, it's the time to plug it in and wait. And that's the part, like if we go to Gettysburg, it's a 10-hour drive. So somewhere along the line, you're going to have to plug in and wait for this thing to charge.
Right.
And it's like, no, forget it.
So battery electric vehicle sales, and we just did our Vermont Vehicle Index. You can find it at meadowhillmedia.com. It showed a decline in plug-in, or
Right.
excuse me, in battery electric vehicles. A similar decline in plug-in hybrid electric vehicles.
Yeah.
Guess what went up? Hybrids.
Yes, I love them.
So people do see a value
Yep.
in higher mile per gallon vehicles,
For sure.
and they vote with their wallet. And
So, laws can be changed.
well, so here's the thing. So for anyone out there that goes, well, I'm not going to be able to get a gas-powered vehicle, that was resolved. Last time I think we spoke, it was still a real thing. What has happened in the 6 months since I last sat in this chair and
Right.
talked with you is that the governor signed an executive order that paused the California EV mandates in
that,
Vermont
right.
until December 31st of 2026.
Yep.
So he gave an 18-month pause saying, we're not there yet, we're not going to hit the mark.
Right.
What we don't want to happen is for the manufacturers, who are the regulated parties here, not the car dealers, the manufacturers,
Yeah.
for them to respond to little old Vermont by saying, oh, you don't want our gasoline-powered cars? You want us to sell more electric vehicles? You're not going to get them.
Whoa.
So in order for, if you're a manufacturer and you're required, if you sell 100 cars to a local dealer,
Yeah.
and the law says 35 of those 100 vehicles have to be electric,
Yeah.
and that's only going to increase up, you can do two things, right?
Yeah.
You can
I love
put
this.
the cars on the lot for the dealer that they can't sell,
Yeah.
or you can reduce the denominator. You can lower the number of internal combustion engine vehicles so you make that mark. So what we were finding in both the truck and the car space, because it's not just cars, it's also heavy-duty trucks, of which there is no electric version that is compatible with the needs of
Right.
Vermont truckers. What they found is that the manufacturers were responding by allocation,
Yep.
by reducing the number. And so if you as a consumer wanted that truck or that car, but you wanted it in a certain color or a certain trim line, and you certainly wanted it that we use gas or diesel, you found more choosing in New Hampshire. Well, that is not something that is positive for the state of Vermont
Right.
in terms of revenue collection.
Wow.
So I think everyone saw, okay, we're not going to hit that mark. There are some negative economic impacts if we enforce this. Governor Scott rightly pushed pause. And then what happened? So then what happened is Congress got to work. And then they passed what's called the CRA, a Congressional Resolution Authority, which says California doesn't have a right to tell auto manufacturers what they can and can't sell in states. That's a federal purview. That's federal preempted. They signed a congressional resolution. It was signed by President Trump, and now that it's being litigated. So while we're on pause about what cars or trucks we can sell on
wait.
Vermont lots, while we have a CRA that says you can't enforce this,
Right.
it's being litigated. So eventually, people wearing robes will issue an order that says, nope, we side with Vermont and California, and that we can enforce these mandates. Or no, we agree with the federal government, and that individual states cannot impose these mandates in their communities. So we're
Wow.
waiting for that decision
Yep.
to be adjudicated. In the meantime, if it turns out the other way, if they say, no, California, Vermont, you can do whatever you want, we go back to the executive order where there's a pause, and then in January of 2027, 11 months away, who's ever governor will have to make a decision about whether or
Wow.
not to extend that executive order or to let it go, and all of a sudden the mandates are back.
Wow.
That's going to be an interesting 11 months.
Yike. Your poor members. They must be going nuts. What to do? They don't just plan for next year. They plan.
Yeah.
They plan out. Is there discussion about not having people sue us? I mean, I can name a few organizations that are probably already writing the lawsuits. I mean, that's ridiculous
So-
for a government to, you can sue us.
Yeah, so
They
there
could
was a
anyway,
lawsuit.
probably.
There was a lawsuit filed.
Yes, I know very well.
It was dismissed.
Yeah.
And the reason why it was dismissed was because it was filed too early.
Right, but see,
And-
they've got it
and-
ready.
And when they filed it, a lot of us were scratching our heads going, this is 6 months too early. They filed
Right.
it in the summer of 2025
Yep.
before even we hit the deadline. And in fact, that's what the judge said. But for those that sue it, how did you find out about the lawsuit? Did you read it in the paper?
I read in the paper,
Well,
yeah.
you know how I found about it? I got a fundraising email saying, send me some money.
Send
We're suing the state of Vermont for
There you
failing to
go.
meet the Global
Lovely.
Warming Solutions Act. So I'm sure that raised a little bit of money for them, and that's fine. But the reality is that
And they
if
will.
they win,
Yeah,
Vermont not only has to pay to defend the state against that lawsuit, which we did,
yep.
but then we also have to, if they win, then we have to pay for their court costs.
I
Their legal
love
fees.
this. Speaking of not having any money, that's excellent.
So
Are they gonna?
is there legislation, Pat?
I
Because I know
hope.
you're going to ask this. Is there
Yes.
legislation to say, hey, how about we either right-size these mandates,
Right.
or we turn them back into goals, and how about we take away that private right of action so anyone can't sue us willy-nilly?
Right, they
and-
may
and
be
pay
able
their court
to.
costs?
They may be able to try. There's nothing that can stop somebody from suing, but you don't invite it.
You don't invite. You don't create statute that invites it.
Right.
So there is legislation. It's sitting. It looks very nice. It's sitting on a wall in the State House.
Oh, my God.
And we gaze at it every once in a while, but never shall it come down and be
Yeah.
discussed and discuss the merits of it.
Huh.
And that's that's how it works.
Yeah.
That's how government works. The
Yeah.
majority rules, and they get to rule.
Right.
And right now, the will of the majority party is not to reconsider the decision made in 2020 to require Vermont to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by the end of the decade, and to face a lawsuit in which court costs are paid if we fail. I can tell you right now, I sit on the Climate Council, I read the numbers, I see the gallons report, we're not going to make it.
No, we're not.
We
for
are
sure.
not going to.
can't imagine.
Let me say it first. On Vote for Vermont. We are not going to make the mandates of
Right.
the Global Warming Solutions Act in 2030.
Yep.
And if we do, something awful happened. If we do, we'll have stopped driving. and
Protest. Back to the old days. Horse
you
and buggy.
know, people often ask me, how are we going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector?
Yeah.
And certainly, more efficient vehicles like the conventional hybrids we talked about.
Right.
Certainly,
I love them.
plug-in vehicles
Yep.
are going to be part of that equation. Mass transit and biking to work when you don't have to drive. All these things together.
Yeah.
It's like a gumbo that's
What?
going to lead to it. But, you know what the most successful program in reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation was?
What?
Zoom.
Zoom. Yeah.
So in 2020, when the world stopped
Yep.
starting up the car and going
Yep.
to work,
We turned on Zoom.
not the people in the trades and the essential services, the doctors, the nurses,
they're
the,
out there, thank you.
the heating fuel. I mean, they're out there working, and really, it's hard to remember that's 5 years ago, but we had a special permission. Those of us in the trades, we're talking about plumbers, electricians, truck drivers, anyone delivering goods and services, to continue to work while everyone else was a stay-at-home order.
Right.
And
On
then
Zoom.
and then what happened was we all got familiar with online meetings,
Yep.
and that has
I
had
live my life on Zoom.
and that had a tremendous effect on gasoline sales. You can see it; it's plain as day. Go to
Yeah.
meadowhillmedia.com and you can see the chart. Here we are in the 5 years prior to 2020 during COVID, and we're about 300 million gallons of gasoline sold to Vermont every year, fairly consistent. Then what happened? COVID happens, and we dropped down
Right.
to about 230 million gallons. Ever since then, we've gone up, but we're not up to where we once were.
Right.
And part of it is there are meetings. That means you all probably have something in your personal
Right.
life where you no longer have to travel.
That's right.
And that means fewer gallons of gasoline. That means fewer dollars into the transportation
Yep.
fund. And it's better for the environment.
Same
But we are not, we don't want to go back. We don't want our most successful program to reduce transportation emissions to be a global pandemic. We just don't, we don't want that to
It's
be
a
the solution
trade-offs
to our
kinda,
problem.
yeah.
So when people say, how are we ever going to meet it? I'm like, if we actually meet the mandates of the global
Something
warming
bad's
solution,
happening.
something awful happens.
Right. Wow.
So we don't want
let's
something
hope
awful
not.
to happen.
Yeah, we can do one of those, notwithstanding. Isn't that what they say in the legislature when they want to change something? Notwithstanding. We have only 3. I'm so bummed. We have 5 pages of
Did I talk
questions.
too long?
No, you're fabulous, and I learned a few things. I'm going to have to ask you something after the show, though,
Okay.
because there was one thing I absolutely didn't understand. I even asked somebody at the dealership.
Okay.
We have 3 minutes.
Okay.
What do you want to say that people would really need to know about this upcoming year, about paying attention? They know they can go, speaking of Zoom, people can go and watch. I think that's the best thing that's ever happened to the legislature, because you see 45 people watching instead of the 10 in the room,
Yeah.
or 8 or 9 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, it is
Well-
great. You know what? If I could sort of reflect on my part-time job, which is I teach business communications to college students, and I think there's real concern. I know among my own children, or recent college graduates, about what's the future jobs hold, right? And with new technology and everything that's coming, and I'm a bit of an optimist. I think that that never before in my 30 years in the communications business as a journalist and as an advocate, more has changed in the last 3 years than the prior 30, and I sincerely mean that. And I think some of it is scary, but it also can be very positive. We have seen the decline in my old profession, journalism, in advertising revenue, and the number of state house reporters that you would see, has declined significantly, and that's all because the business model has changed. And what is replacing it is a number of wonderful journalists, some that are right there, some are watching from home on Zoom.
Yep, right.
But they certainly have a perspective, and I have my perspective, and others have theirs. Kevin Ellis has his. Rob Roper has his. And the fact that we all share this public space, that we have the tools, whether it's through video or social media or Substack columns or newsletters or magazines, that it is more accessible now to citizen journalists.
Yep.
And I think that's really important. And I think it's important for people to read opposing opinions and read local news in order to find out what's going on, because the shrinking press corps is not great, but yet we're also seeing a tremendous amount of output of communications from those that are really smart people.
Yep, and I sign up a lot for some of the lobbyist newsletters, and obviously you have more than I get, so I'm going to have to sign up for them all, because that's a great source of information. And you really should learn how to check in on House committee meetings and Senate, because it's great. You just sit on Zoom and you can't answer yet, because sometimes I would really love to chime in, but I keep my...
You yell at the
can't-
TV and they don't respond.
My husband's
do
going,
they?
"What are you doing?" You know what they're doing? But it's just great that you can be there.
Yeah.
And then you can follow up later if you want to
And you
say
can
something.
actually be there. I mean, that's the
yes.
thing about the State House, which
Yep.
I love. I mean, I've worked in that building for 22 years. I still pinch myself. It's like working in a museum, and the amount of access that you have as a citizen of the state.
Yep,
I hope we
exactly.
don't lose that.
Yep.
I've seen it in D.C. and other places, and
Yeah.
you've lost that.
Well, when I used to work in a New York firm, if we went up to Albany, we practiced. It was so formal. It was ridiculous. And then I came here, and people were like, "Well, my name is Pat McDonald," and I just threw my notes away and just talked, because it wasn't formal. It was great, and they listen.
Yeah.
They do listen.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
anyway, thank you very much, Matt
Thank you,
Cota,
Pat.
for being here. This
Appreciate
was
it.
fabulous. Got me all excited. Thank you for tuning in. I want to thank Matt Cota, who's head of Meadow Hill Consulting. And you can go check his website is excellent, by the way. And you can he's got a wonderful report there that talks about a lot of things that are happening in the State House. And I encourage you to check it out. It was excellent.
Thank you very much.
You're a good guy.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. This is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont.